Commander Day-Wan stood on the bridge of the Horizon's Call, watching the vast chamber of the Galactic Coalition fill with representatives from 47 different species. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few floated in containment fields filled with gases humans could not breathe. All of them were there to judge humanity. 6 months had passed since first contact. 6 months of tests, interviews, examinations, and observations. The Coalition had sent scientists to Earth, studied human history, analyzed human biology, and reviewed every record humanity offered. Now, the verdict was ready. Hana, the ship's pilot, stood beside Day-Wan. Her hands were steady, but her jaw was tight. Behind them, Taemin worked quietly at the engineering console, monitoring ship systems that did not need monitoring. Yunji, the xenobiologist who had spent months building friendships with alien researchers, stared at the viewing screen with red eyes. She already knew what was coming. The Coalition speaker, a tall being covered in silver feathers, rose from the central platform. Its voice translated through the communication system with perfect clarity. Humanity of Earth, we have completed our assessment. We have studied your species with great care and consideration. We understand you came to us in peace, seeking friendship and knowledge. However, we must prioritize the safety of the galactic community. Day-Wan felt his crew shift behind him. He raised one hand slightly, a signal to remain calm and silent. The speaker continued. Your species evolved as apex predators. Your eyes face forward, designed for hunting. Your teeth can tear flesh. Your history is marked by continuous warfare, not just between tribes or nations, but across your entire world. You have nearly destroyed yourselves multiple times with weapons of terrible power. You have conquered or eliminated every competing species on your planet. Images appeared on the screens around the chamber. Human wars, nuclear explosions, extinct animals. The speaker's voice remained neutral, almost sad. Your psychology disturbs us. You form emotional bonds with other species, domesticating and controlling them for your purposes. You endure pain that would incapacitate most species. You heal from injuries that would be fatal to others. You adapt to environments that should kill you. You solve problems through violence more readily than any known species. Hana whispered something under her breath. Day-Wan could not hear it. But he knew it was not kind. The speaker looked directly at the human ship. Most concerning is your potential. In only 200 years, you advanced from basic flight to faster-than-light travel. You achieved this through conflict, competition, and your relentless refusal to accept limitations. If we allow humanity into the galactic community, we fear what you might become. Not what you are, but what you could be. The chamber fell silent. Thousands of alien eyes, in colors and configurations humans were still learning to understand, focused on the small human vessel. Therefore, the speaker said, the Galactic Coalition has reached a unanimous decision. Humanity will be quarantined within your home system. We will construct a barrier at the edge of your solar system. You will have all the resources of your sun and planets. You will be safe and provided for, but you will not be permitted to leave. We cannot risk the stability of galactic civilization. We cannot risk the lives of trillions. We are sorry, but this is final. Day-Wan watched as the screen showed projections of the barrier, a massive energy lattice that would surround the entire solar system, an invisible wall that would trap humanity in their own cosmic neighborhood. A prison built not of hate, but of fear. Taemin stood up from his console. Commander, we should respond. We should fight this. Yunji shook her head. Fight them? There are 47 species out there, billions of ships, trillions of lives. We just met them. They are calling us monsters, Hana said quietly. They are locking us away like dangerous animals. Day-Wan looked at his crew, then at the alien assembly on the screen. He thought about Earth, about the 8 billion people who had celebrated first contact with such joy and hope. He thought about the children who had drawn pictures of friendly aliens, about the scientists who had prepared their entire lives for this moment, about the dreams of exploring the galaxy that now died in this cold chamber. He opened the communication channel. Every being in that vast assembly stopped and listened. "We accept," Day One said. The chamber erupted in confused murmurs. The speaker tilted its head, feathers rustling. "You accept? You do not protest or request negotiations?" "We accept," Day One repeated. His voice was calm, steady, without anger or fear. "You have made your judgment based on what you observed and what you fear. You believe we are dangerous. You believe we are monsters. You choose to protect yourselves and your people. We understand this. We accept your decision." Hana turned to stare at him. Taemin's mouth opened in shock. Even Eunji looked confused. The speaker seemed uncertain for the first time. "You will submit to quarantine without resistance." Daiwan allowed himself a small smile. "We will return to our system. We will stay within the boundaries you set. We will not attempt to break through or deceive you. You have made your choice about what we are. Now, we will make our choice about what we become. We accept." The transmission ended. The Horizon's call turned away from the Galactic Coalition Assembly and began its journey back to Earth. As they entered faster-than-light travel, Hana finally spoke. "Commander, why did you agree? Why did you not fight for us?" Daewon looked out at the stars streaming past. "Because they are right to fear us. Not because we are cruel or evil, but because of what we could become if we choose it. They locked us away and called us monsters. So now we have a choice. We can be the monsters they fear, consumed by anger and resentment. Or we can be something they never imagined." Taemin frowned. "What do you mean?" "We accepted their judgment," Daewon said softly. "But acceptance does not mean submission. It means understanding what we are and choosing what to do with it. They want to see if we are monsters. Then we will show them exactly what kind of monsters humans can be." The ship raced toward home, toward a quarantine that would last generations, toward a future the galaxy could not predict. Behind them, the Coalition began building their barrier. Ahead of them, humanity prepared to accept what they were called and become something the galaxy would never forget. The prison was being built. But the inmates had plans of their own. Superintendent Jae-hyun floated in zero gravity, watching construction drones attach the final solar panels to Station Odin. Outside the viewport, the Oort cloud stretched endlessly in all directions, a vast field of ice and rock at the edge of humanity's prison. 150 years had passed since the containment lattice went active. 150 years since the galaxy locked humanity away. His assistant, a young woman named Yuna, drifted up beside him with a data tablet. "Sir, the power grid is complete. Station Odin is now fully operational. That makes 347 deep space stations active throughout the system." Jae-hyun nodded, studying the reports. Mars was green now, with oceans and forests under a thickened atmosphere. Venus had been cooled and terraformed into a world of floating cities in its upper atmosphere. Europa, Titan, Ganymede, and dozens of other moons now housed billions of people in underground cities and surface habitats. Earth itself had been transformed, cleaned of its industrial scars, turned into a garden world while humanity spread throughout the solar system. "How many people in the system now?" Jae-hyun asked. Yuna checked her tablet. 43 billion, sir. Population projections show we will reach 50 billion within 20 years. 43 billion people all living within the boundaries of one solar system. The galaxy had expected humanity to stagnate, to wither in isolation. Instead, humanity had exploded with growth and innovation. Without access to alien technology or trade, humans had been forced to develop everything themselves. The results were remarkable. Far away, beyond the lattice barrier, Scientific Officer Yunseo sat in Observation Post Theta, one of dozens of coalition monitoring stations that surrounded human space. She reviewed her weekly report to the Galactic Council with growing unease. "Human development continues at unprecedented rates," she wrote. "They have mastered genetic engineering beyond our ethical limitations. Their citizens are being modified to survive in extreme environments without protective equipment. Some can breathe thin atmospheres. Others can withstand radiation that would kill unmodified humans. They are adapting themselves to live anywhere in their system." She paused, reviewing images from the long-range sensors. Massive construction projects orbited every planet. Shipyards built vessels that the Coalition had never authorized, though technically humanity was not violating any terms since they remained within the barrier. "Most concerning," Yunseo continued typing, "is their artificial intelligence development. Denied contact with other species, humans have created AI companions of remarkable sophistication. These AI appear to have genuine personalities and emotions. Humans treat them as friends, family, and colleagues. They have built a civilization where biological humans and digital beings work together seamlessly." She attached images of the latest human megastructures. A ring being built around their sun to harvest energy. Artificial habitats the size of moons, underground caverns on Mars that housed entire cities, underwater settlements in Europa's oceans. "They are not simply surviving," Yunseo wrote. "They are thriving. They show no signs of resentment or plans for revenge. Instead, they have embraced their isolation and used it to advance beyond our predictions. Request guidance on whether this development is concerning." The response from the Coalition came 3 days later. "Continue monitoring. No action required unless humans attempt to breach the lattice." Yunseo stared at the message and felt a chill. The Coalition had imprisoned humanity out of fear, and now they watched as humanity became exactly what they feared, not through violence or aggression, but through relentless advancement in total isolation. Back in the Sol system, Director Minna stood before the Earth Unified Government Assembly. At 70 years old, with extended lifespan treatments keeping her healthy and sharp, she represented the generation that had grown up entirely within the quarantine. She had never met an alien, never seen the galaxy beyond the barrier. But she led humanity with wisdom her predecessors had passed down. "We have completed the deep system surveys," she announced to the assembled representatives from Earth, Mars, Venus, and the orbital habitats. "We now have detailed knowledge of every asteroid, comet, and ice chunk in our solar system. We have resources enough to sustain 1 trillion people if we manage them correctly." A representative from Mars, a man named Dong Hyun, stood. His skin had a slight red tint from genetic modifications that helped him survive Mars's environment. "Director, what is our policy regarding the lattice? Some populations want to test its boundaries, to see if we can develop technology to break through." Minna's expression hardened. "Our policy remains unchanged. We accepted the quarantine. We will honor that acceptance. Not because we fear the Coalition, but because breaking our word would make us the monsters they believed we were. However, acceptance does not mean we stop advancing. We continue to grow, to learn, to become stronger and more capable. If the galaxy ever needs us, we will be ready." Another representative, Sujin from Europa Station, raised her hand. "But Director, what if they never need us? What if we stay locked in here forever?" Minna smiled, a sad but determined expression. "Then we build paradise in our prison. We have 8 planets, hundreds of moons, billions of asteroids, and a star that will burn for billions of years. We have everything we need to create a civilization unlike anything the galaxy has seen. We focus on art, science, philosophy, and exploration of our own system. We become the best version of humanity possible. A young counselor named Kyung-soo spoke up. Some of the younger generation are angry. They feel cheated. They want to see the galaxy, meet other species, explore beyond our cage. I understand, Minna replied. I feel that way myself sometimes. But anger without purpose destroys us. We channel that energy into creation, not destruction. We accept what we cannot change and work with what we have. That is how we honor those who came before us and those who will come after. The Council voted to continue their current path. No attempts to breach the barrier. No hostile actions toward the coalition. Instead, they would focus on 3 goals: sustainable growth throughout the solar system, continued technological advancement, and cultural development that emphasized humanity's best qualities. In the observation post, Yoon Seo watched all of this through sensors and intercepted communications. She wrote in her personal log, not her official report. They call themselves prisoners, but they do not act like prisoners. They have accepted their situation without becoming bitter. They advance without becoming aggressive. They grow without consuming. I wonder if the coalition made a mistake, not in quarantining them, but in believing isolation would contain them. You cannot contain an idea, and humanity is becoming an idea that might one day change everything. Jae-hyun finished his inspection of Station Odin and prepared to return to Mars. As his shuttle departed, he looked back at the lattice, that invisible wall that marked the edge of human space. Somewhere beyond it, the galaxy continued without humanity. But here, inside the prison, humanity had built something remarkable. They had accepted being called monsters and used that acceptance to become something better. Not through changing what they were, but by choosing what to do with it. The galaxy had given them a cage. Humanity had turned it into a crucible, forging themselves into something stronger, wiser, and more unified than they had ever been. The adaptation was complete. Now they simply waited to see if the galaxy would ever realize what they had created. The alarms in Observation Post Theta woke Yoon Seo from her sleep. She rushed to the command center, still pulling on her uniform. What she saw on the screens made her stop breathing. The galactic rim was burning. Entire star systems were going dark, one after another, like lights being switched off across the universe. The Coalition Emergency Network was flooding with distress calls. Words she had never heard before filled the communications. Devourer swarm, total consumption, no survivors. She opened a channel to Coalition Command. This is Observation Post Theta. I am reading massive destruction along the rim. Request instructions. The response came from a coordinator who sounded terrified. All observation posts are to maintain position and continue monitoring your assigned areas. The Coalition fleet is being mobilized to face the threat. Do not abandon your station. Yoon Seo watched as the destruction spread. The swarm, whatever it was, moved like a wave of darkness across the galaxy. Every world it touched became silent. Every civilization it encountered disappeared. The Coalition fleet engaged it in battle, and Yoon Seo watched those battles through military feeds. Ships by the thousands threw themselves against the swarm and were consumed. 3 weeks later, a single shuttle approached the containment lattice from the outside. It broadcast diplomatic codes on all frequencies. This is Ambassador Kwan Ho of the Galactic Coalition. I request permission to speak with human leadership. This is an emergency of the highest priority. Inside the Sol system, Fleet Admiral So-Ra received the alert in her office on Mars. She was a tall woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen 6 decades of life within the quarantine. She commanded humanity's defense fleet, ships that had been built but never used in combat, designed for a war that had never come. "Let him through," she ordered. "One shuttle, scan it thoroughly. If it is clean, grant him passage to Mars." Director Minna, now 90 years old and still leading the Earth Unified Government, waited in the diplomatic hall with Sora and several other officials. They had never met an alien in person. The Coalition had prevented all contact for 150 years. Quan Ho entered the hall and the humans stared. He looked almost human, but his skin had a slight blue tint and his eyes were too large. He wore a Coalition diplomatic uniform and moved with obvious fear and exhaustion. "I am Ambassador Quan Ho," he said in perfect human language. "My great-great-grandmother was human. She was outside the quarantine when the lattice was activated. I carry human blood, though I have never met your people until now." Mina gestured for him to sit. "Welcome, Ambassador. We have been watching the destruction through our sensors. Tell us why you are here." Quan Ho's hands shook as he activated a holographic display. It showed the swarm's progress across the galaxy. "They are called the Devourer Swarm. We do not know where they came from, perhaps from beyond our galaxy. They are a hive mind, billions of individual organisms that act as one. They consume all biological matter. They cannot be reasoned with, cannot be negotiated with. They exist only to feed and reproduce." He showed battle recordings. The swarm's creatures were insect-like, each the size of a small ship, with massive jaws and razor-sharp limbs. They moved in perfect coordination, overwhelming defenses through sheer numbers and adaptation. When Coalition weapons destroyed them, the swarm learned and adjusted. Weapons that worked once became useless in the next battle. "The Coalition has lost 40 systems," Quan Ho continued. "Trillions are dead. Our projections show the swarm will reach the core Coalition worlds within 6 months. We cannot stop them. We have tried everything." Sora leaned forward. "And so you come to us, the monsters you locked away." Quan Ho met her eyes. "Yes. The Coalition Council has authorized me to request human military assistance. We need your help to survive." The room fell silent. Finally, a counselor named Jin Wu spoke. "Why should we help you? You imprisoned us. You called us dangerous. You denied us the galaxy for 150 years. You made our children grow up in a cage. Why should we risk our lives for you?" Quan Ho looked down. "You should not. We do not deserve your help. But I am asking anyway because the alternative is the extinction of 47 species and the end of galactic civilization." Mina studied the ambassador for a long moment. "What does the Coalition offer in return?" "Full removal of the containment lattice," Quan Ho said immediately. "Complete citizenship rights in the Coalition for all humans. Access to all galactic trade routes and territory. A formal apology for the quarantine. Reparations for the isolation we imposed. And whatever else you ask that is within our power to grant." Sora stood and walked to the window overlooking Mars's green valleys. "We have built a good life here, Ambassador. We have 43 billion people living peacefully throughout this system. We have no poverty, no war among ourselves, no shortage of resources. We have art, science, and culture that is purely human, untainted by outside influence. Why would we risk that?" "Because it is the right thing to do," Quan Ho said quietly. "And because if the swarm defeats the Coalition, they will eventually come here too. Your lattice will not stop them. They will break through and consume your worlds just as they are consuming ours." Mina turned to Sora. "Admiral, what is your assessment?" Sora returned to the table. "We have built a defense fleet of over 10,000 warships. We have trained soldiers and marines using combat simulations and historical data. We have weapons and tactics the Coalition has never seen because they never needed them. We have had 150 years to prepare for a war we hoped would never come." She paused. "We can fight this swarm, but we will do it our way, not the Coalition way." Mina nodded slowly. She looked around the room at the other leaders, seeing the same thoughts reflected in their faces. Finally, she spoke. "Ambassador Quan Ho, we will help. but we have conditions beyond what you have already offered." "Name them," Quan Ho said with relief in his voice. "First, human forces will operate under human command. We will coordinate with coalition forces, but we will not take orders from coalition officers who do not understand human capabilities. Second, we want complete access to coalition intelligence on the swarm, every piece of data, every battle record, every analysis. Third, we want guarantees in writing, signed by every coalition member species, that the terms you described will be honored. And fourth, when this is over, we want the truth told. Every species in the galaxy will know that the monsters they feared saved them." Quan Ho stood and bowed deeply. "All of these terms are acceptable. The Coalition Council has given me authority to agree to any reasonable demands. Thank you. You may have just saved trillions of lives." Sora walked to the ambassador. "Do not thank us yet, Ambassador. You came here because you were desperate. You unleashed the monsters from their cage. Now you will see what humanity has become in our isolation. We accepted your judgment of us 150 years ago. We accepted being called dangerous. We accepted being locked away. Now we accept the responsibility to fight, not because we want to, but because it is necessary." She turned to her officers. "Send the recall order. Every ship, every soldier, every resource we have for war mobilization. Activate all defense protocols. The Sol Defense Fleet is going to war." As Quan Ho left to return with the news, Mina stood beside Sora. "Are we ready for this?" Sora looked at the holographic display showing the swarm's destruction. "We have spent 150 years becoming what the galaxy feared we could be. Not conquerors or destroyers, but the most capable warriors in existence. We are ready. The question is whether the galaxy is ready for us." The containment lattice began to power down for the first time since its activation. Humanity's prison was opening, and what emerged would change the galaxy forever. The Sol Defense Fleet emerged from the lattice in perfect formation. 10,000 warships, each designed with 150 years of innovation and warfare theory. The Coalition observers watched in stunned silence as humanity's military capability was revealed for the first time. Captain Bo-Ra commanded the strike carrier Indomitable, a vessel 3 kilometers long that carried 200 fighter craft and 5,000 Marines. She sat in the command chair, reviewing tactical data on the swarm while her crew performed final system checks. "All stations report ready," her executive officer, Commander Sang Mi, announced. "Coalition fleet is signaling us for formation coordinates." Bo-Ra studied the Coalition battle plan on her display and immediately saw the problems. They were planning to engage the swarm in a traditional line formation, ships side by side, firing at range. It was the kind of warfare that had worked against other species for thousands of years. Against the swarm, it would be suicide. "Send a message to Coalition Command," Bo-Ra ordered. "Tell them we are declining their formation assignment. Human forces will engage using independent tactical doctrine. We will coordinate targets, but not tactics." The Coalition response came quickly, confusion and concern evident in the message. They had never encountered forces that refused to follow standard battle procedures, but the agreement had been clear. Humans would fight their own way. The first major engagement came at the Crucible system, where 3 Coalition species were making their last stand. The swarm had already consumed 2 of the system's 4 inhabited worlds. Refugee ships were fleeing, while the remaining Coalition fleet tried to hold a defensive line around the 3rd planet. The Coalition fleet consisted of 800 ships, massive vessels with powerful shields and energy weapons. They formed a wall in space, firing continuously at the approaching swarm. Millions of swarm creatures died in the barrage, but millions more kept coming. The swarm learned quickly. Their formations shifted, their approach vectors changed, and slowly they adapted to the Coalition weapons. The human fleet arrived just as the Coalition line began to break. Bo-Ra watched the battle unfold and made her decision. All ships execute pattern typhoon. Fighters launch in wave formation. Marines prepare for boarding operations. The human fleet did not form a line. Instead, they broke into smaller groups and dove into the swarm formation like sharks into a school of fish. Human ships were smaller and faster than coalition vessels, designed for maneuverability rather than heavy armor. They wove through the swarm creatures, firing kinetic weapons, missiles, and lasers in coordinated strikes. The coalition observers were horrified. Human fighters flew directly into the swarm masses, targeting specific creatures with precision strikes. Human ships used the swarm's own numbers against them, causing collisions and confusion. And most shocking of all, human Marines launched boarding pods directly at swarm vessels. Commander Hyun-woo led his Marine squad, unit designation Wolfpack 7, through the hull of a swarm bioship. The interior was nightmare of organic material, pulsing walls and acidic fluids. His squad wore combat armor that could survive in hard vacuum, toxic atmospheres, and extreme temperatures. "Contact front," his point soldier, Private June, called out. A wave of swarm creatures rushed down the corridor. The Marines opened fire with weapons designed to be effective against biological targets, high-explosive rounds, thermal grenades, and chemical dispersants. "Keep moving," Hyun-woo ordered. "Our objective is the neural cluster. Take it out and this whole ship dies." They fought through corridor after corridor. Swarm creatures attacked from every direction. 2 Marines were injured but kept fighting. They had trained for this. Human soldiers did not retreat when injured unless they physically could not continue. Pain was temporary. Failure was not. They reached the neural cluster, a massive organic structure that pulsed with bioelectric energy. Hyun-woo planted 4 thermal charges while his squad held the entrance. "Charges set. 30 seconds. Everyone out." They ran back through the corridors they had just cleared. Swarm creatures pursuing them. They reached their entry point and jumped into space just as the charges detonated. The bioship convulsed and died, drifting as just another piece of debris. "Wolfpack 7, mission complete," Hyun-woo reported. "Requesting pickup." Bo-Ra watched as squad after squad completed similar missions. Dozens of swarm bioships died from the inside, something the Coalition had never attempted. They had considered boarding swarm vessels suicidal. Humans considered it tactical. But the cost was high. 3 human ships were destroyed. 400 Marines did not return. 6 fighter wings were reduced to half strength. Bo-Ra watched the casualty reports come in and felt the weight of every name. The Coalition commander, a being named Velthar, sent a message to Bo-Ra. "Your tactics are effective but reckless. You are losing too many personnel." Bo-Ra responded coldly. "We are winning, and we knew the cost before we started." The swarm began to adapt to human tactics. They changed their formations, reinforced their bioship hulls, and tried to predict human movements. So the humans changed again. They used the Crucible System's star as a weapon, luring swarm forces into its gravity well and watching them burn. They deployed mines that released biological agents specifically designed to disrupt swarm coordination. They used psychological warfare, broadcasting signals that confused the swarm hive mind. The battle lasted 6 days. When it ended, the swarm forces were destroyed or driven back. The 3 worlds of the Crucible System were saved. The Coalition fleet had lost 200 ships. The human fleet had lost 800 ships and over 20,000 personnel. Velthar came aboard the Indomitable after the battle. He found Bo-Ra in the memorial hall, where the names of the dead were being displayed on a wall of light. She stood silently, reading each name. "Captain Bo-Ra," Velthar said quietly. "I must ask, how do your people continue to fight after such losses? How do you maintain morale when so many die?" Bo-Ra turned to face him. Her eyes were red but dry. We fight because our people depend on us. We fight because it is necessary. We fight because if we do not, more will die. And we honor our fallen by making sure their sacrifice meant something. But the pain, Velthar said. The loss. How do you bear it? We are human, Bora replied. We feel pain as deeply as any species, maybe deeper. But we have learned something in our 150 years of isolation. Pain is not weakness. Loss is not defeat. We carry our dead with us, not as burdens, but as reminders of why we fight. They made their choice. They knew the cost, and they did it anyway. That is what makes us dangerous, Commander. Not that we do not fear death, but that we fear failing each other more than we fear dying. Over the following months, human forces fought in 17 major engagements across Coalition space. They introduced tactics the galaxy had never seen: boarding actions, close combat, biological warfare, psychological operations, and coordinated strike groups that operated with terrifying independence. They took casualties that would have broken other species and kept fighting. The Coalition watched as the monsters they had feared proved to be exactly what was needed. Not monsters of cruelty, but monsters of capability and determination. Humanity did not fight with hate or rage. They fought with cold efficiency and unbreakable will. In observation posts throughout Coalition space, beings like Yunseo watched and recorded. They saw human soldiers charge into certain death to save alien civilians. They saw human medics treat wounded Coalition soldiers before their own injured. They saw human commanders weep for their dead and then plan the next battle with clear eyes. The galaxy had called them monsters and locked them away. Now those monsters were bleeding for people who had imprisoned them. And that, more than any weapon or tactic, was what truly frightened the Coalition. Not what humanity could do with violence, but what humanity chose to do with compassion. The final battle against the Devourer swarm took place at the Barrier Nebula, where the Coalition had gathered every remaining military vessel for one last stand. The swarm had been pushed back system by system, but they had adapted and learned. This would determine the fate of the galaxy. Fleet Admiral Sora commanded the combined human and Coalition forces from the bridge of the Horizon's legacy, named in honor of the first ship to make contact with the galaxy. She looked at the tactical display showing 12,000 Coalition ships and 4,000 remaining human vessels facing a swarm force 3 times their size. All Coalition commanders, this is Admiral Sora. We have one advantage the swarm does not expect. They have learned our tactics over these months of fighting. They think they understand us now, but they do not understand one thing about humans. We are at our most dangerous when we have nothing left to lose and everything to protect. She activated her final battle plan. It was risky, perhaps suicidal, but it might work. The human fleet would punch directly through the center of the swarm formation, drawing their attention and forces. Meanwhile, Coalition ships would flank from both sides, crushing the swarm in a coordinated strike. The battle began with a human charge that shocked even the Coalition forces who had fought beside them. Human ships accelerated to maximum speed, fighters and bombers launching in continuous waves. They hit the swarm center like a hammer, punching through with devastating force. Captain Bo-Ra led the strike carriers in their final assault. Her ship, damaged in a dozen battles, shook as swarm weapons tore at its hull. But she kept going, her crew fighting with every weapon they had. Around her, human ships exploded in brilliant flashes, each one taking dozens of swarm creatures with them. "Hull breaches on decks 7 through 12, Commander Sang-Mi reported. "We are losing power to primary weapons." "Switch to secondaries," Bo-Ra ordered. "All remaining fighters, launch now. Marines, prepare for defensive positions in case they board us." Commander Hyun-Woo, still alive despite the odds, gathered his remaining squad members. Wolfpack 7 was down to 15 Marines from the original 50. They had fought in every major battle, survived countless close calls, and lost too many friends. But they prepared for one more fight. The human breakthrough created the opening the Coalition needed. Velthar led the Coalition flanking force with precision, finally understanding how to fight alongside humanity, not trying to protect them or restrain them, but trusting them to do what they did best, charge forward and break the enemy. The swarm tried to adapt, tried to counter, tried to survive. But they faced an enemy that would not stop, would not retreat, and would not surrender. Human ships rammed swarm bio-vessels when they ran out of ammunition. Human marines defended breached hulls with nothing but combat knives when their guns failed. Human pilots flew their damaged fighters into swarm clusters in final acts of defiance, and slowly, impossibly, the tide turned. The swarm's coordination began to break down. Their adaptation could not keep up with human unpredictability combined with Coalition firepower. System by system, their formations collapsed. When the last swarm bioship died, a silence fell across the battlefield. Of the 4,000 human ships that entered the battle, fewer than 600 remained. Of the 12,000 Coalition ships, 8,000 survived. The cost had been terrible, but the galaxy lived. 6 months later, a ceremony was held on a newly constructed station at the former location of the containment lattice. The barrier had been dismantled completely, its materials repurposed to build something new. The station was named The Acceptance, a memorial to all species lost in the war and a symbol of a new beginning. Ambassador Sung Min, once a young counselor named Kyung Soo, now represented humanity in the Galactic Coalition. He stood beside former scientific officer Yun Seo, who had requested a transfer to work with humans after watching them for 150 years. "It is strange," Yun Seo said, looking out at the gathered representatives from every Coalition species. "I spent my career watching humanity from outside the barrier, writing reports about how dangerous you were becoming. I never imagined I would stand here beside you as a friend." Sung Min smiled. "What changed your mind about us?" "I watched your soldiers die defending our worlds," Yun Seo said quietly. "I watched your medics save our wounded. I watched your commanders weep for losses and then lead another battle. I realized the Coalition made a mistake, not in quarantining you originally, but in never trying to understand what you truly were." Fleet Admiral Sora approached them, moving slowly. She had been injured in the final battle and still carried those wounds, but she insisted on attending the ceremony. Beside her walked Ambassador Quan Ho, who had remained with human forces throughout the war. "Admiral," Quan Ho said, "the Coalition Council has asked me to present this to you." He handed her a document, sealed with the marks of all 47 Coalition species. Sora read it and looked up with surprise. "They are offering me a position as Supreme Military Commander for the entire Coalition?" "You led us to victory," Quan Ho replied. "You showed us how to fight an enemy we could not defeat alone. Every species agrees that you earned this position." Sora looked at the document for a long moment, then handed it back. "I am honored, but I must decline. I am a human admiral. I serve humanity first. Let the Coalition promote one of their own commanders. Someone who learned from this war and can lead with both Coalition and human understanding." She turned to look out at the stars beyond the station. "We fought beside you. We bled for you. We lost 37,000 ships and over 2 million people saving the galaxy. But we did not do it to rule you. We did it because it was right." The ceremony began with speakers from every species. They told stories of human bravery, sacrifice, and cooperation. They formally apologized for the quarantine, acknowledging that fear and prejudice had nearly cost them everything. They granted humanity full citizenship, trade rights, and territory throughout the galaxy. But the most important moment came when Director Mina, now 140 years old and attending via hologram from Earth, addressed the assembly. She spoke in a voice that was soft, but carried the weight of generations. 150 years ago, you called us monsters and locked us away. Commander Day-Wan, who led our first contact mission, said 2 words: "We accept." The galaxy thought we submitted, but we accepted something different. We accepted what we were, and we chose what to do with it. She paused, looking at the assembled species. You were right to fear us. We are dangerous. We are violent. We evolved as predators, and we carry that nature in our genes. But you forgot something important. Every species has darkness in its nature. What matters is what you do with that darkness. Do you let it consume you, or do you channel it toward protecting what you love? We spent 150 years building a civilization that emphasized our strengths while controlling our weaknesses. We became warriors, yes, but warriors in service to something greater than ourselves. You gave us a cage and we made it a crucible. You called us monsters, and we became the monsters the galaxy needed. Not monsters of cruelty, but monsters of capability. Min-Ah's image looked directly at the Coalition speaker. We accept our nature. We accept what we are, but we also choose our actions. We chose to help you, not because of the freedoms you offered, but because it was right. We chose to fight beside you, not to prove ourselves, but to save lives. We chose to forgive your fear, not because we are weak, but because we are strong enough to understand it. The ceremony ended with the unveiling of a memorial wall. On it were inscribed the names of every being lost in the war against the swarm. Human names appeared alongside aliens from 47 different species, no distinction made between them. They had all fought together. They had all sacrificed together. They were all honored together. Captain Bo-Ra stood before the wall, finding the names of the crew members she had lost. Commander Hyun-Woo stood nearby, looking at the names of his fallen squad mates. Around them, Coalition soldiers did the same, searching for friends and comrades among the endless list of names. A young alien, barely more than a child from one of the species humanity had saved, approached Bo-Ra. It held out a small flower, a gesture of gratitude its species used to honor the dead. Bo-Ra took the flower and knelt to be at eye level with the child. "Thank you," she said softly. "They would have appreciated this." The child looked up at her with large, curious eyes. "Are humans really monsters?" Bo-Ra thought about the question, about 150 years of isolation, about the war they had just fought, about the friends she had lost and the enemies she had defeated. She thought about what it meant to be human. "Yes," she said finally, "we are monsters. But we choose to be the kind of monsters who protect children like you. We accept what we are, and we choose what to do with it. That is what makes us human." The galaxy had imprisoned humanity away as monsters. Humanity accepted that judgment, and in accepting it, they became something the galaxy never expected. Not conquerors or destroyers, but guardians. Not perfect or without darkness, but aware of their nature and choosing to channel it toward protection rather than destruction. The containment lattice was gone, the barrier had fallen, and humanity took its place among the stars, not as the monsters the galaxy feared, but as the allies they needed. The acceptance was complete, and the galaxy would never be the same. In the quiet of her quarters that night, Admiral So-Ra recorded a final message to be included in the human historical archives. "We were judged and imprisoned. We were called monsters and locked away. We could have become bitter and vengeful. Instead, we accepted the judgment and chose our own path. We showed the galaxy that monsters can be heroes. That danger can be turned toward protection, and that acceptance of what you are is the first step toward choosing what you become. This is humanity's legacy. Not that we were never monsters, but that we chose what kind of monsters to be." The message ended. The stars shone beyond the station, and humanity, finally free, finally accepted, finally understood, looked toward a future where they would write their own story among the countless worlds of the galaxy.